Hello.
Hey.
I'm gonna close my blinds. It looks weird.
Oh yeah, a little bright.
It always happens.
Okay, so we did have a couple of people say yes to today.
I
So,
saw. I was excited.
yeah. I was actually a little worried because I joined like right on time. Okay, so someone did join earlier. Ismael. You're muted again.
I was like, I wonder why he joined earlier. Like way earlier or just kind of early?
No, like a couple minutes earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. It is weird because I think I sent the invite. Yeah, I sent the calendar invite from the Heal email, but I made everything else on this account, so I'm getting a little tired of just having to use the Heal one.
What's the difference? I guess, is it in your Outlook and then you just have a different inbox, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I need to add the Heal email to Outlook, so I have it on Gmail only. So I have to go to the website, switch accounts.
Oh yeah, that's really annoying.
Yeah.
Okay.
I might go
Yay,
back and do
John's
that.
here. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Hi everyone, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hi John.
Hola, everybody.
Okay, so we'll give it a couple more minutes for people to join. And it's like right after lunchtime for a lot of folks.
Christian, mind enabling the screen share?
And there you go, should be active now.
Thanks. Hi Priscilla. Thanks for joining.
Hi, Daniela. Thank you.
Buenas tardes. We're gonna get started shortly. We have a packed agenda, so we're just gonna give it maybe one more minute, and then I'll just get started, and folks can continue coming in while we give some background. I don't know why it's not a norm yet to have like a welcome music. I really feel like sometimes it's needed. And then somebody that joined Guerrero, who is it?
Francisco Herrero from Women Heaven.
Oh, Francisco, nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us, Francisco. All right. All right. I think we can get started, right, Christian?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you feel ready, you can start, Daniela.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thanks everyone for joining today's data collection and tracking workshop as part of HEAL. We are going to be recording the session so that those that were not able to make it can still view the material, and we also encourage you to share this video once it's published. If there's some staff in your organization that you think would benefit, we encourage you to share this as well. I hope that you find today's conversation useful. I welcome questions as we go through the material. It can be as interactive as you'd like. And yeah, feel free to ask as we're going. You don't have to feel like you have to wait until the end. And Brett, thanks for joining. Welcome. My name is Daniela Flores. I think for the most part, we've come into contact at some point, but I'm a community advocacy and research specialist at Comité Cívico. And I have Christian Torres here, who's the other grant officer, special projects manager at Comité as well. So you'll get very familiar with both of us, but we're very excited to have you today. And I think we have a lot of really helpful information to pack in this 1 hour meeting. And again, hope that we can make it as useful as possible for you and what your questions you're having and the kind of support that we can provide. So we are going to be talking about data, and I love data. So pardon me while I nerd out a little bit. We have a couple things. Well, we want to have, again, an interactive discussion. So I'll kind of use this as a guiding framework, but as things come up that you have questions about, even if they're not in our agenda, let me know. And, we can also talk about taking some of the recommendations that you might have of questions that are still pending, and we can take those to the individual TA calls that we'll have. But today we're hoping to talk about a little bit about data and, using your data and how it can be, powerful to use data. We're going to talk about the methods that you can use to collect data to tell your story, to tell the story of your program, of the community that you're serving. We'll also be talking about different strategies for collecting data. Anything, we're going to be covering some examples. We're going to look at Excel spreadsheets, Google Forms, and, talk a little bit about surveys. And hopefully this is a helpful, some background material in some parts of it for the upcoming TA workshop on outreach. So hopefully you feel they're connected. That's the intention. All right, so let's talk a little bit about data. I'm wondering if anybody would like to share of a time that you used data to support a decision, or where you could share like where that data came from, where did you collect it, or did you find it somewhere else? Would somebody like to just share to get us started, just thinking about data? Brett, I see you unmuted. Would you like to share?
No.
No worries.
I don't even have my video on. I'm just listening.
Okay, no problem. Well, I can share about a recent time that I used data. I use data probably every day. I think we all do in one way or the other. The last thing maybe I'll talk about yesterday. I work with Comité Cívico, and we have a Salud Sin Fronteras initiative where we distribute PPE everywhere, right? In the county, different places, we have distribution sites. So yesterday I went to go reload my car with PPE because I was gonna get ready for distributing it this weekend. And so I went to go pick up, like 1,000 masks. And so one piece of data there was, I had to sign a sign-in sheet to sign off like what I'm taking. And then the organization, that I'm also a part of with Imperial Valley Equity and Justice Coalition. And I just had to sign that. I took that and I had to describe what the piece of article I got, right? And I think that, thinking of data, we use it so kind of a lot, even though we might not realize it, but that documentation that we're doing is also going to help us report to our funders, report to our community, like how our impact is, right? The data that we, in that spreadsheet that or it's just like a sign-in sheet, it'll be able to tell us how many masks were we able to give out. And that tells us about impact. It tells us about, how often our community was able to get maybe more access. We give these out at the border for essential workers. So, we're able to track that too. And I'll show you another example a little bit later of how we use that as well. But there is power in data, whether you're collecting data for reporting because you have to for funders, or whether you're using it for advocacy as an advocacy tool. You might be thinking of advocating to the county. There's a policy, there's a program you want to support because it'll benefit the communities that you're working with. You might pull some numbers about the magnitude of the issue that you're hoping to address. So I have here an example just to, again, get us thinking about data and like, why we're so committed to collecting it and why funders are committed to asking you to submit that, right? So I'm going to read this statement here, or if you can read it as well on your own. And we're going to just kind of look at how data can make a difference in telling our story. So many households living in Imperial County are food insecure. They're unable to meet food needs at least 7 months of the year. Individuals are living in poverty in Imperial County, and children who need food for healthy development are living in these households. So I'm going to go to the next slide and you're going to see what this statement, kind of digest. How impactful do you think this statement is? And then I'm going to turn to the next slide and just show you how data can kind of help you and help us describe a little bit in more detail what we're talking about when we're describing the experience of food insecurity in the Valley. So if you look at in red, I added some data pieces here. So instead of the previous statement now, nearly 15% of households living in Imperial County are food insecure, unable to meet food needs at least 7 months a year. According to the Health Equity Report Card developed by Salud America, 1 out of 4, 25% individuals are living in poverty in Imperial County. And that's nearly 1 in 3 of children who need food for healthy development that are living in these households. That's 30%. So it's pretty powerful to see that, 1 in 3 children are the ones that are experiencing this. Had you not had the statistic, it's really hard for the person reading the statement to know the magnitude of the issue. So it really helps paint the picture a little bit in more detail. So, again, this workshop is really about helping you give you some strategies of how you can collect the data. But again, it's really helpful for those that are working to collect it to really think about what's the purpose, to what end are you collecting data, right? Because there's also a data collection like burden on participants or people receiving services. So there's like some on the other side, like we don't just collect data for collecting data, really want to be intentional about it. So data collection, some of the purposes, it really can support organizations with grant writing to receive funding, to support their work. It can also be used to support advocacy efforts, as I mentioned previously. But it's not always clear how to find it or how to use it the most effectively. So again, we talked about why someone might use data beyond just, being asked to submit this. It helps you illustrate a need. It helps you illustrate, you know, it helps inform what's public opinion in terms of, you know, what your organization's doing, and, you know, communicating to the public, you know, how you're helping address either an issue or filling a gap or serving a specific population. And it also helps you communicate to both the general public and also, you know, other organizations, maybe some coalition partners that you might have. It helps you communicate about impact and reach. Who you're serving again, and what's the difference that your organization's making to help address some of the things that you all talked about in your applications. So selecting a data collection method, there's quite a few. I mean, there's three main methods that you can think about, like sort of bucket areas. There's quantitative and there's qualitative. And then there's also mixed method that includes both quantitative and qualitative strategies. So in this slide, you'll see that there's, you know, quantitative data involves, is numeric based. It really is, you know, you can think of quantitative data as something that you would potentially analyze with a, you know, either Excel or you might think of, I don't know if, you know, if folks have experience with like SPSS, but I know it's used in some government agencies. But there's really like the spreadsheet is on Excel is something that, you know, a lot of people, that's what they use to keep track of the quantitative piece. But there's also surveys that you can administer to your clients or to your participants to understand who you're serving, and also, you know, if you want to ask them specific questions about like whether they're learning stuff in your program. But again, we'll get into more detail there. Qualitative data is data that involves narrative. It could involve, you know, qualitative data is non-numeric based. It usually involves, you can, it's more narrative. So it's a storytelling side of it. You will have, again, it helps answer why. So in the previous one, we talked about quantitative being like identifying who you're serving, whether someone learned something. But in the qualitative, you can answer questions of the why. And that's what it's really powerful to be able to talk to somebody one-on-one and to learn about how they're experiencing something. Maybe you can learn like, you know, an experience in what they're struggling with, or you can also learn about, you know, like some of the successes about your program, and really like they can tell you why your program's great. Sometimes there could be talked about as like anecdotes, like anecdotal information. But again, there's ways to use qualitative and anecdotes to really put evidence behind behind supporting a story of what you're trying to tell, whether it's impact or reach. And it is very legitimate to use anecdotes, and, you know, you can collect it in a systematic way. You can collect it through surveys. If you have a survey that has close, you know, it has like quantitative type questions to get at, you know, maybe there's like categories of, you're asking about ethnicity, age, and those are, you know, more of the quantitative notes, but you could have open-ended questions of, you know, in a survey, you could ask, you know, why was this workshop helpful? And some of the ways that you can also report qualitative work is by doing an observation. If you know that you're not necessarily wanting to talk to the participants, but you can observe and you can see, you know, like, oh, you can have observation questions that you answer at different events. And then like to try to get details of the questions you're trying to answer. But again, you can use these methods in so many ways. So I just wanted to give you some examples, but I'm going to provide like another, like a visual of how you could visualize the data that we're talking about and the differences. So if you're trying to figure out who attended an event that you did, by asking in a survey, you get quantitative data about who was part of that survey or who was part of your event. And you're able to say, okay, there were some students, administrators, and some educators. So there was a mix of people at my event. And again, if there's interest in like support visualizing data, that's like something that you can let us know. There's some, potentially we could share some templates, or we could also help walk you through some examples on our one-on-one meetings if you have specific questions. Some ways that you can visualize qualitative data is by having a word cloud. For this specific event, we asked them to give one word of how they would describe their experience at this convening. And so you, this word cloud, essentially the bigger the word is, it means that multiple people talked about that word or actually entered that word. So a lot of people entered that they thought it was amazing, informative, empowering, and inspired. And so the smaller words, meaning that they still mentioned it, but just not as frequently. And on the right, you can see part of that narrative that I mentioned, like what did they really think about this convening? And they said, oh, well, I enjoyed hearing of all of the stories and being surrounded by others who can relate to me. It was both inspiring and empowering. So it tells you more about why it was inspiring and empowering. So as we think about your work plans that you submitted, I really wanted, as I reviewed all of your work plans, and I wanted to bring this point about output and outcomes and kind of like talk about the difference of what they are, and also like the difference in like for your program, like where you might want to track both outcomes and outputs, but there's a difference. And I wanted to kind of talk about the difference in that so that you can identify whenever you're being asked to create work plans or like, reporting mechanisms. You could also think about like, okay, like what would be my outputs and what would be my outcomes. So outputs, if you have an activity, some of you listed your activity being outreach. That was very common here, where you're going to be outreaching to share information about, for example, COVID relief options. So if that's what your activity is, then you would want to, you can think of your outputs as the product of your activity. So you did outreach. So what was the product? So you can quantify the number of people that you reached in your outreach. So if your outreach was calling people, for example, I know right now, I know some people are calling older adults right now during the vaccine to let them know that the vaccine registration is opening. So you would be doing some outreach and you call. And so your output would be the number of people that you called to tell them about the vaccination event. And so the outcome would be, what's the intended effect of the activity? So in this example that I'm talking about now regarding vaccines, just to make it really true to what's happening right now, you would think of a person doing outreach, calling folks about this vaccination event, that activity. And then your product is, okay, I called 20 of my friends to register, and I told them how. And so the intended effect here would be that they register. Another intended effect is that they actually go to the vaccination event. And then another intended effect might be that you let them know that there's a second dose. Another intended effect could be that they go to their second dose. And that's just like an example to paint that difference of your outputs and outcomes. And the reason I talk about the intended effects is because some of these intended effects are effects that you might not be able to measure in the program that you're delivering. And that doesn't mean that your program is not being successful or that it's not being effective. For example, there's a few people that have submitted an intended effect being to increase food security. That one it could be really hard to document, right? Like you might want to document outputs to your funder, but also keep track of potentially outcomes. What I mean by that is with increased food security, if you're giving food to 100 families and that's, but you wrote in your work plan that you want to increase food security, it's really hard to know whether people are more food secure because you've been delivering food to them. It's really hard. You'd have to ask them. Like there's like ways to kind of identify if somebody's food secure, but it really is a little bit more of a challenge. There's some people that were also listing like knowledge change. If you have a health education program and you hope that your participants are more knowledgeable about nutrition, then you really have to ask them, and there's surveys that you can do, and there's like ways that you can ask them if they're learning, but it's really hard to capture. So some of the ways that to your funder, what you can report, and not just to your funder, but for your own documentation of the work that you're doing, you could say, if you want to measure food security, like something related could be like the number of families that received food during this year, right? If you want to think of knowledge change for health education, you would say the output would be the number of Zoom meetings that you had around nutrition education. It could also be the number of people that showed up to your Zoom meeting. It could be the number of people that registered. So just wanted to really like focus in on this difference, because I'd love for you to take a look back at your work plan and see like, what did I do? Did I list outcomes or outputs? And outcomes are great. That's what you're striving for. So you could definitely leave them there, but just basically you would be working with us, and like there's some things that will be really hard to measure again. And so you could, let us know how that has, how your work has helped contribute to that. But we certainly know that there are some things that are just, beyond what you might be able to measure for various reasons. Christian, I don't know if you'd add anything else to kind of this description before I go into the examples.
No, I think that breaks it down pretty well. And like you mentioned before, if we do need to discuss this more at length, when we do our one-on-ones with each of you guys, we can start the discussion on this and how we can help you either track your outcomes or your outputs and how you want to quantify, right? It might change from your work plan. So we do understand that. So we will give you some of that leeway when we have those one-on-ones and as you guys start your projects.
Thanks for that, Christian. All right, so take a look at this list. I'm going to grab a sip of water, but take a look at this list. And I want to show you some examples of the outcomes and outputs that you sent over in your work plans. I kind of put them all together, not all of them, but just some examples. Take a look at them and see if you can identify which ones are outcomes. Okay, so maybe you did, maybe you didn't. It's a long list. But these here that I've highlighted in orange are outputs. So the number of people that you reached, the number of households you provided a service, the number of households you referred, canceled appointments. So I think some people were hoping that they have fewer canceled appointments. That's why it's there. And so the outcomes are the other ones that are not in orange, now shown in yellow. So those are the ones that are a little bit harder to measure, like knowledge gain, reduced stress, things like that. Okay, so moving on to collecting your data. Now that we have talked a little bit about like why we need data. We talked about, some of the different types of data that you might be collecting. We can talk about how you can collect it. And there's many ways, there's many strategies. Today, we're going to touch on two We're gonna go through examples using Microsoft Excel, and then we're gonna go through Google Forms, basically trying to use a form or a survey. There are different things. A form is really the mechanism, the vehicle that lets you, collect some information. And before COVID, we, using paper, paper sign-ins or paper surveys, or those things are pretty common. But right now, I'm not sure how many of you are really kind of hosting anything in person. Probably not many of you. It's mostly you're providing a quick service maybe, and you really, right now we really are encouraging ways to like limit that contact. So that's why we're going to touch on virtual, electronic ways to collect right now. But again, if in the future, or if you do feel like that you would like more information of how you might go about having the paper one, like how you would design it or what software to use, we could talk more about that. But we're going to start talking about spreadsheets, and I'm going to show you an example of a tracker that you can use to track things like your outcomes. Your outputs. You see why it's kind of confusing, but hopefully not anymore. If you always get confused, think back of the example of the vaccination outreach. So here I'm sharing my screen. Wait, hopefully I'm sharing the right thing. Yes. Okay, so here is an example of the Salud Sin Fronteras PPE distribution. And again, this is outdated, so we're not currently using this anymore. But this is just one way that you can start tracking your outputs. So right now what you're seeing is it's Google. It's on the Google platform, but this is technically it's called Sheets. But if you have the Microsoft Office, you might have Excel. They're almost the same thing. They're just, different makers, but it's called a spreadsheet essentially. And both of them have similar utilities. They have rows. It's like, a notebook with columns, but instead you're able to really do a lot of neat things with it. And so I recommend that if you're working on a team where multiple people need to use this tracker, and that's often the case, I recommend using the Google version of Excel. And you essentially, it's free. So you should be able to, if you just type in Google Sheets, it should come up. And like I said, it's free, so it's pretty awesome. You just need a Google account. That's it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the tracker. So for this tracker, we're trying to collect outputs here. We want to know how many masks we're distributing. And so to orient you, there's these are some of the common things you want to collect, depending on what you're working on. If multiple people are working on this tracker, you can leave a note up here. I like to do that. You can also, if you look at the spreadsheet, you can also create multiple tabs. For example, if you're having, there could be many reasons. The options are endless, but if you are having 3 types of events in so I'm going to take one example here because I remember Ismael and Calexico Needs Change. They're doing 3 different sub activities, sub projects, and they're doing a community fridge, they're doing a community garden, and they're doing a community library. I'm not sure what they're calling it, but it is to give folks access to books. And so you could have 3 tabs if you wanted to keep track of your projects into 3 different spreadsheets to collect different types of information. For this specific spreadsheet, we only have one, and I left a note here because I'm working with coalition partners. I told them what the purpose of this spreadsheet is, what they should be collecting, and and just kind of a quick note. And it could be, again, widened if you wanted to give more detail. But essentially we wanted to collect the date of the distribution, the time, because we know that access to services, like, there's people that work, and so it's important that we have times that are accessible for people. For example, here we're trying to reach farm workers, so we know that some folks in our coalition went at 1 a.m. to give PPE out. And this is helpful because it helps you like also ensure coverage. So if we keep going at 4 p.m. to the same location, we might be giving the PPE to the same people, and we want to make sure that we reach more people too. So we put the date so that, or the time, so that we can essentially say, okay, we need more morning times. And here really our population is, we decided that in the evening was the best time. We just kind of, sometimes we go at 3, sometimes we go at 4, and sometimes we go at 5, and we just kind of change it up. If you want to put like the person that's working the event, you could put their name, or if you are working with other groups, you can put their groups. You could put the name of your event. If you're having multiple names, like if you're having an info session for the community garden, then you could put, info session is the name of the event. You could put who's leading it. You can put another column of the person, your staff member that's leading that event. And then here the community garden one, what it might look like is like, okay, we had a leadership meeting between our staff, or like a monthly meeting. And then, just to track your activity. You could also put that we actually had like 2 info sessions, and you would put 2 separate roles for that. You also can track location. If you are out doing things in the community, it's helpful to know where you're having reach. What's your reach? This helps you inform that. So we go to downtown mostly, but now we've expanded. So that was just back then. Number of volunteers, it's helpful to know like how many people are in an event. Here, instead of number of volunteers, what Calexico Needs Change might do is have how many people attended the info session on the community garden. Then you could put that number there. If you just keep a list when you have your meeting, you just keep track of how many people showed up. Usually if you're having it on Zoom, if in person, obviously you might have a sign-in sheet, but if you're in virtual, then hopefully, people registered, or while you're having your meeting, you count, and you usually want to collect the names of who went so that you can continue engaging them. For us, we wanted to put how many masks were distributed, again, the number of bags that were given out, and if other kind of PPE types were given out, and general notes. So this is a really standard practice, of just organizing information. You can organize it at different levels. If you have questions about your project and how we could think of a specific type of tracker, just to the context of your project, feel free to bring those questions to the TA call, and we're happy to ideate and like think about it together and brainstorm some ideas. Any questions so far? Hopefully some of it is new information. I'm not sure to what extent you're sharing, you're hearing new information, but again, you can also tell me like, I already know this, go faster. There's like a new feature on Zoom where you can actually click like a fast, like speed up option. So usually you have like, usually you can put a thumbs up or reaction. They just added a feature where you can tell me to hurry up. Okay. Okay, so for this next part, I want to show you how you can use Google Forms to collect information. Or Christian, actually, would you add anything else to the spreadsheet tracker, or anything else that you feel like would be helpful?
Yeah, so one advantage is if you are using the spreadsheets to track information, if you do have some data that you want to be able to kind of visualize right away, Excel or even Google Sheets lets you kind of just highlight that data and then create a simple bar graph, a pie chart, things like that. So if you do want to be able to add those types of things, and Daniela just showed us an option. And this is just a very simple way. If you just want to be able to, instead of, if you're creating a flyer or you're putting together a report for a funder, you don't always just send them the numbers, but you can put the table or the graph, and it looks a little different, so they can actually like visualize, oh my God, this is how much they did in January, February, March, things like that. So that is one advantage to using simple spreadsheets sometimes, and that you can pretty much automate that process later on.
Thanks for that, Christian. That was helpful. Yeah, I really didn't cover a lot of other things that you can do. You can do so many things like pivot tables. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but you're essentially like similar to what Christian's saying. You're able to, actually, I'm not really sure where. Okay, so here, you would go to, I'm not sure what this one will do. Maybe it'll quantify the different categories in here, but if you go to data, and you put pivot table, and it'll just tell you that it'll create a new sheet. It'll tell you, well, maybe it didn't do it correctly, but here I can add, it's not the right data for this, but essentially you can use a pivot table to, if I wanted to know, I would need a number here, but if I wanted to know like how many times we went to the Calexico West border, then that number would come up of how many times I went there, and then how many times I went to downtown Calexico. So the pivot table is something that you might look at your spreadsheet, and it might be helpful to you to help quantify and add up and sum up like what's in your column. So it created a second tab, but you can also go to the first tab again. There's another thing that I like to do, and whenever I create a spreadsheet, I create filters. So if you highlight the top column and you go to this kind of triangle looking thing, it says create filter. You can do that, and it's really helpful because it also helps you organize your data. So if you have a long list, again, if I want to see, just the times that I went to downtown Calexico, I would click on the little upside down triangle. If you look at each column, it actually has the little upside down triangle every time in the next to the name of that column. And so I would uncheck Calexico West border because I just want to see the ones in downtown, and I press OK, and then it'll kind of filter it out. That way I only see that one. And if I want to bring it back, I can just put clear all, or I can just select it back. If my list is pretty short, I might just go that way. Yeah, so there's there's so many things with this, but I encourage you that, to kind of play with it. And I'll move on because I know there's other things I want to cover. But again, if folks are interested in learning more about this, we do have some resources that we can share, like, on how to use Excel or the spreadsheet. So moving on to working with forms, that's something that, you might have heard of something like SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics, but there are survey platform or, forms, I guess, mechanisms, platforms to collect data, to collect information from people, to register people. People have even used this. I know we have to form a petition. This is one way to do it, but Google Forms is actually really awesome because Google has all these free things, and that's one of the things that's free here. If you go to Google Forms, you can find the free version of essentially the SurveyMonkeys of the world. You, again, just need a Google account, but it's free. So you can just create one. And you have access to forms that you can create. There are some forms that are already created for you, that it's like templates, and you can just use those and customize it for yourself. So if you wanted to do that, you might, maybe you're doing event registration. So you would select that one because it can kind of try to guess the questions that you might want to ask for an event. And again, this is completely customizable. In order to change this here, the picture, you could, just to orient you, I guess, there's many kind of tools, menu features here that you'll see throughout. For example, this you will see on the right side. that will help you manipulate whichever box you're hovering over. Like if you're clicking the different kind of boxes, you will have different options. So for this one, I want to change the picture. So you might look at your computer to try to find a different picture. This one, I'm going to choose this one. I think it's the flowers. Oh, actually, I'm not sure why I went in there. Let me see. So it's really intuitive. I don't know why it's not letting me manipulate this top one. Christian, any idea why that is?
Are you trying to do the image or the title?
The image at the top.
Okay, sometimes they're like tied to banner images.
Yeah. So sometimes you have to start from scratch if you need to change that, right, Christian?
Yeah, sometimes it'll do it. Sometimes you also, if you switch the color palette, it unlocks it for some reason. Yeah, so yeah.
That's here. So here's the, here.
Right.
I guess you can, yeah, there you go. Okay, so I wasn't doing it correctly. You have to pardon me because I use, I don't use forms as much. I use other ones, but there is always a way, and like usually you can click around and figure it out. It's pretty intuitive, but I guess they have some pictures here for you to use, or you can upload your own on here, which is what I was trying to do. But like Christian said here, say the theme will be different. So it'll change it. That's how you do it. And then it also, like he said, it has a color palette. So you could kind of just, it's quick and you kind of don't have to do too much work. You can also change these. So you're going to create your form. You want to recruit people to your info session. You can click there and you say, instead of event registration, you want to say community garden, info sesh, and then you basically customize all the details. This template's nice because it tells you like some ideas of what you might want to collect. So then you maybe you want the name, maybe you want email and their organization name if you just want to know if anyone's affiliated. If you're having a multiple day event thing, you can also ask that. So I'll pause here for this first. I'm going to focus on this first box here. I want to show you like how you would change the type of question. So you can do that by clicking this little triangle again, and you can ask a different type of question. Here, in order to collect the name, you have to select short answer. But if you want to ask, tell me why you want to join, you might want more lines and you change it to a paragraph. Or you want to just, like below, you might be asking a multiple choice question. So you would select multiple choice. If people can select more than one option, then you would go to this one and show checkbox. There's many ways you can customize it. I would encourage you that the best way to learn is to try it yourself. Just try different ways that that you can display your question. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to use one or the other. So as you're clicking around, sometimes that's how you find what you need just by clicking. But yeah, so this is what a form might look like. One thing that I want to mention that you might already know, but maybe not, is that you can duplicate. You can make a duplicate if it's like your organization, and then you want to say organization address. Maybe it's like it's just like a trick to just make it quicker. You can also delete it if you didn't intend to do that. And you can also make this question required. Many times people might feel intimidated from your question because you might not be able, if you press required, you can't continue to the next question. So people might, one thing that I really do in my approach for the most part, I don't require almost anything. For the most part, I only require email. Or like the way to contact them, if it's a phone number or if it's an email. Sometimes if people feel like they don't want to be anonymized, or if they want to be anonymous, then you can leave the name out. But again, if your intention is to build your list of clients, then you might need the name so that it's just easier so that you can communicate. But there's not always an issue with that, but sometimes it is. And I want to show you, there's like a lot of things that you can do, but for the sake of time, I'm just gonna encourage you to play with this. There's a few more features I want to show you. If you wanna, so this is the view of the designer. So you're designing this form, this is what you see. But if you want to see what the participant is seeing when they're completing your survey, you essentially put preview on the top right. And it shows you, oh, okay, this is what they see. If you notice that there's a little red star, and that's because it's required question. You can't submit the form without putting your name. So if you put submit, it will tell you that it's a required question. The last thing I'll show you from this form is that you can look at the responses when people are registering. You can see the responses here, and you can also it automatically creates a list of your registration community, whoever's registering. For the sake of just like showing you an example, I'm going to show you. Our coalition was looking for volunteers for the PPE distribution. So we created this form. Again, this is the designer view form. If you want to see what the participants view, I would click that. And for this one, we were actually requiring every question to be answered. We put a description of what we're hoping for. We put our social media info, and we collected some information. We wanted to get in touch with them. We wanted to know when they wanted to volunteer and what days would work for them. So we asked them some specific questions, and if they want, what gift card they wanted. So it helps you really collect information so that you don't have to collect this information the day that you're actually going to interact with them. It helps you just speed up the process. The other thing I wanted to show you was how this like responses can be helpful. So I'm just going to move fast so that you don't see the emails of these people. And I actually see, I know there's like names and stuff. So I'm going to move to this section because there's no names. But I want to show you that you can actually see data presented when you make these automated forms. You don't have to do anything fancy. You just literally go to responses, and it gives you a visual representation of something, of the question that you're asking. So for this one, how do you want to volunteer? We wanted to know what type of volunteering they wanted to do, and it showed me a quick graph, and I can get a very good sense of that. The other thing you can do here is click here on the top right, and it can create if you click that, it's going to take you to a spreadsheet. And again, I'm just going to go really quick because there's like personal information here, but essentially you didn't have to create this spreadsheet. It created it on your own with the questions that you added in your form. But then you're able to already have a list of the people, of the volunteers. And we actually, as you see with all of the highlights, that we use this to track and to organize our volunteers. Just to show you another example really quick. We did an information session. This is what it looked like. And we asked some questions in English and Spanish. We didn't really have a lot of questions for people. We just wanted to know their name and email so that we can set them their Zoom link. And again, we wanted to be inclusive, so we did it in English and Spanish. And again, if you have optional questions, you can kind of say like, oh, this is optional, you know? Okay, I've talked a lot and my throat is really dry now. But I really wanted to get you as much information as possible. The last thing I'm going to leave you with is, some of you do want to know about your participants' needs or like the ways that you're helping them. So you might want to ask them questions about the intended effects of your program. So you might consider doing an assessment, a survey. So for us at IV Equity, we did a needs survey. We wanted to know how people were being impacted by COVID. So we actually created this, again, English and Spanish, a survey that was not required. The only question that was required was a name. Everything else was voluntary. They could answer as much or as little as they'd want. So I'll show you really quick what it looked like. And we wanted to ask the type of questions that some of you want to know about, like more informative rather than just counting the people that you serve. So we wanted to know if people were experiencing housing insecurity due to COVID. And we gave them some examples, and again, English and Spanish, so people could choose that. And then we gave them the option to tell us more. We know housing problems are diverse. There's a lot of ways that people can be affected. So we wanted to give the option for people to give more of the qualitative piece, right? To tell us about what's the situation. Something that you can't really get from just knowing whether people consider themselves having issues with housing or not. So again, I won't go into so much detail, but I did want to say that there are ways to get information and to report information about your intended effects, or also known as your outcomes. And so I basically, would encourage you to let us know if you have questions. I mean, I love surveys. I do this for a living. And if you do need some help crafting questions, I'd be happy to be a partner on that. If you want to, if you design the survey and you want me to take a look at it, or Christian as your TA providers, we can do that. So definitely. And you also might think about surveys, you don't always need to do them. It's more you want to be thoughtful of when you do them and for what purpose. We don't, again, just collect data for data's sake or for collecting data. So there was some other neat things I wanted to show you, but maybe I'll just tell you about it. And if you do have questions, if you want to know more, then you can let us know and we'll have a second part to this workshop. But want to give you an example of, a preview sort of, we'll be talking about outreach. We're having another workshop on Tuesday, on the 16th on Tuesday. But if you, want to show you how you can connect some of these kind of tools, virtual tools in the outreach, wanted to show you about Bitly's. So in my screen, you should see a website. It's called Bitly. So you can use Google Bitly and then press enter on Google and it'll take you to, you have to create an account. So it won't look like this when you go in there. You have to create an account, but you would just follow the instructions there. And if you look at my slide, you can see that a flyer can include a short link. If you're going to conduct a survey, or you have a registration for an event, you will actually copy. So I'm going to show you really, really quick. So you have, say you have your registration or your survey. So you copy this really long link that you actually do not want to share with anyone, because people, if you share it on a flyer, people are really not going to type in every single word. So you would copy this and you go to a software, an engine like Bitly. Again, I already created my account, so that's why you see it this way, but you would essentially create, you would paste it, and it creates it for me. And then here it says customize back half. So then I want to say, it's the COVID survey of, I'm just going to say Calexico. Maybe I don't want to take the word, but I'll just say Cal. And then you would put save. And you just copy that. And instead of sharing that really wonky list, a really wonky link, you just, share this short one and it takes them to your form. Again, it's nice because you can put it on flyers and it has a really short version that people can really understand. You can really attach anything to this Bitly. In terms of documents, if you have documents on Google Drive that you want to share with people, you can also use the Bitly. So any link, any link you can create a short link for, and you can customize a short link. And I just want to show you really quick here on Bitly. You can also see how many people click your link. There's a quick graph here that you can see. And it's nice because you can see if you're being effective. Last thing I want to show you, and again, there's so much more we could talk about, but for the sake of time, we kind of just put a few things together for you. Say you want to show the QR code. I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with QR code, but on my screen, you can see a kind of a black and white square. And that is actually, my flyer here has instructions of what you do with that. Please don't complete the survey that's on here right now. But if you look at if you put your camera, if you open your camera on your cell phone and you put it towards my screen, or wherever the QR code is at, it will take you to the link. It'll take you to that short link that you also saw.
I don't think you're showing the flyer right now. You're showing us a survey.
Oh, okay. Let me show you the flyer. I've been talking about the short link and you haven't seen it. Okay, thank you so much. So you see it now. Okay, so on here you can see the QR code that I was talking about, and then you can also see the short link that I was showing you about. So for this survey, we created a short link and it's on Bitly. There's also things like softwares like TinyURL, and they're free, so you can just use them. You can Google it. You can put a Bitly or Tiny Link or short link and something will come up. Here's the QR I was talking about, the QR code. So our phones, for the most part, you know, the phones that are smart, I don't know honestly to what versions, it allows, but if you hit the camera option and you just point it towards the square, it'll pop up the survey or whatever document you've linked to the QR code. To create the QR code, you will, and again, I know we're almost at time, so I'm just going to show you, this is the last thing I show you. But you also just Google, you know, QR code generator, and you can see that they're free also. You can create an account, but most of them let you do it without creating an account. And you could press a link. You can just copy your long URL and it will create a QR code specific to what you want your audience to see. Again, not everyone knows how to use QR codes, so you have to know whether it's the appropriate people to do it with. It's something that you could teach, you know, the people that you're serving. It is really like something that would benefit people. So, but again, if you know they don't have phones, or that it's just, you know, they don't use their phone, like it might not be a good idea. For those cases, like there might be reasons why you might need a paper survey or a paper form. But again, that's more like post-COVID world. I'm going to stop here because I do want to make sure, like, if there's a question that I can answer it, but I also want you to feel free to, if there were some topics that you wanted to go deeper into that I kind of just mentioned briefly because of the time constraint, then definitely let me know. So that's what I had prepared for you. Hopefully oh man, I had one more slide. I'll show it to you, but feel free to, if you have to hop off, I understand. I'm going to end very shortly. I'm just going to project that slide now. So you can see what you can use data for, but really you want to use it to learn about something. You might adjust something because of it. And then you're doing something, right? You have your program, you have your activities. So here are just some examples of how you can use it. And I know we talked about it briefly, but just to wrap it up, you know, you can use it to improve your program, to document successes, to share successes and lessons learned with the broader community or within your organization, to show where there's unmet needs or gaps in service. If you want to make an argument for future funding, or if you're just reporting to your funder, or if you're advocating about a specific issue. So that is my final slide. Are there any questions at all? Do you have any thoughts about any of this? And again, I know I want to respect your time, so don't feel like you have to. Just wanted to open it up in case there were questions, or Christian, if you had anything else to add.
Yeah, I do have a quick question for those of you guys that are still able to remain. Would you like us to put together maybe a resource list of everything that Daniela talked about and other things we think you might find useful? So this would be just an Excel sheet that we would host for you guys, and then you would click on it and we would link out and describe each of these different tools. If you guys think that's a good idea, let me know, and just a thumbs up or a yes in the comments, in the chat, I mean, and then, you know, we'll work on that in the next couple of weeks.
Hey, Christian, this is Marlene, and absolutely, I would appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Marlene. Thank everybody else. I think I'm capturing that it's a strong yes from everybody.
Thanks, Christian. And Marlene, I had actually a resource I wanted to share with you. I didn't actually look in the list of see whether you had joined us, but until now, but I will share. I know you had a question in your TA about like looking at data. So I do have some resources that I will send through Christian as he's going to have a TA call with you. I will make sure that that one makes it your way, the one I want to share with you. It's called Race Counts. If you Google it, you can find Imperial County data specific to like, just look, it's a visual by race and ethnicity. So, but I'll send it your way. I'll send you the link and you can get more familiar with that one.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really kind of, I'm kind of down myself right now, but it's getting in the past week, meaning like within the last 5 days, one family, African-American family, the whole family got COVID and 2 passed. Yeah, so it's still deadly, still prevalent.
I'm so sorry, Marlene. It's just heartbreaking to hear, and for all of us here on this call, like getting those type of news almost weekly sometimes. So I appreciate that you all are here today and that you were present, and I'm grateful for this partnership and that we get to kind of talk about how to help in some ways to kind of put into either numbers or words, like the things that you all are seeing and the ways that you're serving your community.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I did see that John asked that we share the slides. Absolutely. We're happy to do that. So thank you everyone so much. Again, I'm able to stay on if others have questions. I'm not in a rush. So just thank you so much for being here. And again, if you do want to go into a deeper topic, I'm happy to like make note of that, and whether in a one-on-one TA, if it's only like a few people that want that help, or if it's worth putting another workshop together, I'm happy to be to hear your thoughts on that as well. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a really wonderful weekend, and I hope you all stay safe, and that we'll see each other soon. We're having another workshop like this on Tuesday the 16th, but it's going to be a outreach. We're going to have a panel on outreach, and folks are going to share some lessons learned. It's also at 2. Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's at 2 on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Adios.
You're welcome. Bye. It was good seeing you.
Same here. Take care.
Bye. You too. Christian, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to talk about, but hopefully you thought that was helpful. And
Yeah.
Michelle, you too.
I just as we were going and realizing that we were just not gonna have enough time to go over everything, the resources just popped into my head. I know I just got a couple links like that yesterday for PACE actually, but I think it'll be good for everybody to just be able to go back to those things. So let me start recording, so it starts processing.